On Friday, the Washington Post dropped a massive report on Trump ally and political advisor Roger Stone. So there's a lot involved in this. It included some descriptions and some videos of an upcoming documentary that Roger Stone had agreed to be in. So basically what he had is this Danish camera crew following him around for a couple of years filming. Interesting. So now in one part of the film, Stone is seen getting out of the Capitol while the riots are going on, packing his suitcase. From the report, as the mob ransacked the Capitol on January 6, 2021, Stone hurried to pack his suitcase inside his elegant suite on the 5th floor of the Willard Hotel, which is very near where that was happening, by the way. He wrapped his tailored suits in trash bags, reversed his blackface mask so its Free Roger Stone logo was hidden, and slipped out of town for a hastily arranged private flight from Dulles International Airport. Interesting. So obviously, really, didn't want to be noticed there. Fun. In fact, Stone had told an aide as they were being filmed at the hotel by a Danish camera crew, quote, "I really want to get out of here." Well, that was January 6th. That's when everything was going down. It was a day. And in fact, the day before, he talked about how, oh yeah, I'm going to stand and fight. Yeah, we're going to stand and fight. Nope. Gone. Why? Well, Stone said that he feared prosecution by the incoming Attorney General, Merrick Garland. Stone said, quote, "He is not a friend." No, he's not a friend. Now Merrick Garland, of course, I've talked about how incredibly weak Merrick Garland has been in a lot of situations involving the Capitol riots, involving Trump, involving people related to what happened on January 6th. Nonetheless, he feared Merrick Garland. Imagine that. Okay, now, that said, there's more. Washington Post reporters reviewed more than 20 hours of video filmed for the documentary, A Storm Foretold. I've got a couple of clips from that. That will be released later this year. The footage, along with other reporting by the Washington Post, provides the most comprehensive account of the dates of Stone's involvement in the former president's effort to overturn the election. So that's very important as well. And the rallies in Washington that had spilled over into violence on January 6th. So, Stone has denied, of course, having any involvement in the actual riot. Here's what he said, I believe last year, talking to Newsmax, quote, Let me say this as categorically as I can. Any claim, assertion, implication, or otherwise any accusation that I either knew about or was involved in any of the illegal acts in Washington, D.C. on January 6th is categorically false. There's no evidence to the contrary, and an honest investigation will prove that. And yet, of course, he was like, nope, I gotta get out of here. Nope, I gotta go. So now, why would you fear Merrick Garland coming after you if you didn't do anything wrong? Oh, well, of course, any right-wingers that are watching be like, well, obviously the Democrats are going to do a witch hunt. Duh. Well, now, here's the thing. They say that because Republicans have no problem with launching ridiculous witch hunts. I mean, anybody remember Benghazi or the promises of going after Biden if Republicans retake the House of Representatives following the midterms? Yeah, so there's that. Now, as far as the Democrats are concerned, look, I've said it before, the Democrats are weak and feckless. They don't really ever come after anyone, at least not with, their guns blazing, unless, of course, you're talking about progressives. They love to go after progressives, but they don't really go after the right all that hard. So, now, that said, look, if Roger Stone was involved, and I'm going to lay out some points which definitely show his involvement here, well, that's going to be devastating for him. Devastating. In fact, the report continues. Stone privately coordinated post-election protests, featuring prominent figures, like, for example, Alexander Ali, and in January, communicated by text message with leaders of the far-right groups, including, of course, Oath Keepers, which he had as bodyguards, that had been involved in the attack on the Capitol. The filmmakers did not capture conversations between Stone and Trump, but on several occasions, Stone told them or his associates that he had remained in close contact with the president. And on the day of the attack, of course, he had packed his bags. As he packed his bags, Stone did tell the filmmakers that the riot was a mistake. Quote, "I think it's really bad for the movement. It hurts. It doesn't help." I'm not sure what they thought they were going to achieve. Okay. So now look, there's kind of two different things going on January 6th. There was, of course, the riot, which was very, very obvious. People trying to break into the Capitol, fighting with police, et cetera, et cetera. That was the obvious thing. Now, the other thing was the Green Bay sweep. Now, that's the plan where you had Steve Bannon, Peter Navarro coming out and talking about this, or a lot of other people involved. And it was an effort to pressure Mike Pence to not certify the election. So the idea behind that, of course, was to create a media firestorm around Mike Pence, around the election, after he refuses to certify it. Again, that's just a ceremonial role, and everybody knows that he actually cannot refuse to seat the president who had won. But it didn't matter because you had propaganda around it, and what they wanted to do was create an endless news cycle of propaganda so that they could go out and make a case about mass voter fraud, so-called irregularities, state challenges to the vote count, which were planned to happen and did happen. And of course, all of that was to allow the fake electors that were waiting in the wings to assert, and they had even filed paperwork to the National Archives that we are the real electors and we're going to vote for Donald Trump because of this mass voter fraud. So there's that. And all of this, of course, was an effort, an attempt to hand the presidency over to Trump or essentially do a soft coup. So now, one of the rioters had testified to the FBI that they were a distraction so that the real challenge, the Green Bay sweep, could actually take place. So now, Stone seemed to have been involved in some of that plan. In fact, a day before the announcement that Stone's sentence was commuted, the Danish filmmaker's footage shows that he told his staffer, Enrique Alejandro, that Trump should use the powers of his office to reject the official results in that year's election and secure victory in the courts with help from federal judges who he believed owed them a favor. So that includes Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Amy Coney Barrett, Judge Brett Kavanaugh, and Judge Neil Gorsuch. So they thought, well, we can just go to those conservative judges that were, Heritage Foundation choices, and, well, they'll back me. They'll back me. Now, again, that was never guaranteed, but that was the thought process behind this. So now, that said, there's more here. On July 9th, 2020, to show you how long they had been planning this, Stone told the filmmakers at his home, quote, "It's going to be really nasty." He predicted that the Democrats would try to steal the election, which is ironic, of course, because they were the ones trying to steal the election, and said that if the electors show up at the Electoral College, armed guards will be there to throw them out. Interesting. Very interesting. Now, the other thing, and this is one of the videos that have been released so far. Well, Stone had been coordinating a whole bunch of calls. And this is all related to, again, the Stop the Steal. This is stuff that was on November 5th. Okay? So now, let me give you some video of that. Take a look.
Just monitor the news for the most egregious examples of vote stealing of any type. Ballots found in trash, ballots found in dumpster, ballots burned, suitcases brought into the anything you can find and send us the links. We are relaunching Stop the Steal. We're going to raise money for Stop the Steal. It'll be like falling off a log.
All right, so that's actually a different date. That was on January 6th, of course, that had happened. Nonetheless, that had coincided with Trump Jr., other accounts, tweeting out with the hashtag Stop the Steal. So they had all kind of worked together to try to show that, hey, look, there's so much voter fraud here, so much election fraud, and you know, that's why we need to reverse the decision. Okay. So now the other thing that they said was that Stone had advised Trump that, yes, let's take power, let's use the courts. Thankfully, that did not happen. Now, there was another thing. Now, Stone had drawn up a Stop the Steal action plan. This was earlier. And so now that action plan was visible on Alejandro's laptop, according to footage captured by the filmmakers. As the protesters were mobilized, the plan said state lawmakers would be lobbied to reject official results. The tactic proved central later on to Trump's efforts. Lobbied by fake electors, court challenges, all of that. Stone also had a 15-minute call with Michael Flynn. The video shows he had told Flynn that they could document an overwhelming and compelling fraud in each battleground state and urged them to spread the word on social media. That day, Trump's campaign and his sons Donald Jr. and Eric began using the hashtag Stop the Steal on Twitter. And again, this is after Stone had claimed that he had not been a participant in any of the organizations using the name or phrase Stop the Steal in 2020. Stone was also filmed and photographed with a Capitol rioter, Ali Alexander, actually one of the organizers involved in the rally turned riot. And on the evening of January 5th, Stone had appeared at the Rally to Save America on Freedom Plaza near the Willard while being guarded by multiple Oath Keepers, two of which, who were with Stone, Joshua James and Brian Ulrich, were later charged with sedition conspiracy after allegedly storming the Capitol. James pleaded guilty this week and agreed to cooperate with federal prosecutors. A third, Mark Grodz, admitted in a plea deal that he had traveled to the D.C. area from Alabama with weapons, 2 guns, and joined fellow members in the Capitol riot. So now that was on the 5th. What happened on the 6th? Now, he said he was going to be there, right? Well, apparently he wasn't. Now, there's a couple of reasons. One of them is that he and Steve Bannon didn't exactly get along. They were not friends. They were not friendly. Now, I'll get into that a little bit later, but he was not there. Of course, this rally turned into a riot. And then that's when Roger Stone was like, I got to get out of here. I do not want to be a part of this. I don't want to be implicated. I'm going to have them take pictures of me watching the riot on TV to show that I am not there and I am not involved. And so he also had denounced the violence, and yet on the 5th, the night before, had welcomed it. In fact, in a recorded conversation, as an aide spoke of driving trucks into crowds of racial justice protesters, Stone said, quote, "Once there's no more election, there's no reason why we can't mix it up. These people are going to get what they've been asking for." So basically violence. Lovely. Lovely. The next day, of course, after the violence, well, after saying, oh, well, this is bad, it's going to make us look bad, he then said it was inevitable, quote, "When you can't get a fair and honest judicial opinion, when you can't get a fair and honest transparent election, when your legislative process is constipated by fear and threat," he said, trailing off for a moment before slightly misquoting JFK, quote, "Those who make peaceful progress impossible make violent revolution inevitable." Ah, so there we are. Now, what this seems to suggest, maybe I'm reading it wrong, who knows, But I think Stone, obviously, in my mind, had advised Trump on how to reject the results of the election, working with members of Trump, of the Trump team and Trump himself to try to overturn the election. Now, he spread the big lie, of course, that of course led to the riots. And then when the riots happened, tried to cover his ass and had tried to pressure Trump into preemptively pardoning everyone involved. As I said before, riots were only one part of the plot. The real election theft was slated to happen in the states and depended on Mike Pence and certification. And of course, Mike Pence did not go for that. But again, all of this puts Roger Stone right in the middle of this soft coup. Not a good place to be, especially without a preemptive pardon. Now, that of course is assuming, because the January 6th committee, they don't have the power themselves to go and do charges, right? They have to refer these charges to the Justice Department, meaning, of course, Merrick Garland, who, as I mentioned earlier in the story, well, that's he's a bit weak and feckless. And so we don't know if that's going to happen. But from what I'm reading it, he was absolutely involved and absolutely culpable in the attempt to try to overturn the election.